The views expressed in this podcast stems from our passion for the security industry and for the physical security operations. They do not necessarily reflect the views of our employers. Welcome to Security Theater with Scott and Carlos, where we pull back the curtain on the world of security.
I'm Scot Walker, your co-host, with years of experience in the trenches of the military, federal law enforcement, and corporate security.
And I am Carlos Francisco, here to debunk the myths and misconceptions that surround the security industry.
In Security Theater, we dive deep into the realities behind security measures, exposing what's truly effective and what's just for show.
I agree, and we'll tackle controversial topics, interview industry experts, and share stories from our own careers that reveal the often hidden truth about security.
So whether you're a security professional, a curious skeptic, or someone just looking to understand the world of security better, join us every week for a no-holds-barred discussion.
And get ready to see beyond smoke and mirrors. This is Security Theater.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Security Theater, the actual podcast Security Theater, where we take you behind the scenes of security and how it gets done. This time, we've got a great guest for you today, the great Gene Traylor, fellow Arizonan. Good to see you, Gene. He is a security professional. He's been a security professional for many, many years. He's a CPP certified through ASIS International and an all-around good guy.
All around
Welcome.
good guy. That's true.
I appreciate that. I am excited to be here with you both. And again, I am looking forward to seeing what Security Theater can help our security organizations and communities out there to be better. So
yeah, we're all about change here, Gene. We're going to try and make the change happen one podcast at a time.
That's it. That's it, buddy. And I changed my set, as you guys can see. So one change at a time. There you go,
right,
man.
That's right.
I like it.
I do feel like you should have like a bourbon or something in your hand, Carlos.
Well, I got a little water, man. We'll do it with
Yeah.
today. It's a little early for me on this wonderful weekend. So yeah, man.
Well, wonderful. So, Gene, we have been talking a little bit. We talk all the time, but something that is kind of top of mind is security policies and procedures. And that is something that we try to get really nerdy here with corporate security on the podcast. And we try and really dig in, try and understand the different aspects of corporate security. And one of the aspects that we've never talked about are policies and procedures. And this is especially, you have experience in this, but this is especially important if you have in-house security that is working with contract security. And we'll talk about a situation that might be kind of an important issue right now. But what is it that concerns you, or what is it that kind of you've learned over your decades of experience in corporate security that's so important about policies and procedures?
Yeah, I've always told my team members that the best gift that you can give each other is clarity, right? And so when you look at policies and procedures, it's really the foundation, it's the roadmap to really execute and be successful in whatever that organization's goals are or whatever the department goals are. And for me, it's really understanding what it is that the operation is doing on a day-to-day basis. You have to see that from a frontline standpoint as a leader. You have to get into the weeds. You have to see, okay, does this make sense for us to continue with what we're doing? And I'll just, give an example. So, if you have a process where you have team members going in and out of a certain designated area of a again, a door, or again, you're egressing out of a certain space, there's a lot of considerations that need to be taken into fact. So you need to look at, should they have a time frame where employees can come in during those designated hours, right? So you want to make it office hours, normally Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Team members can come in through those certain areas, or do you do you consider it a restrictive area, or again, depending on what is going on that day, do you have contractors coming in through those doors where you're going to be impeding with team members who are trying to come in and start their day, things like that. So you really have to look at it from a front line standpoint of, does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, who are the key stakeholders that need to be involved with making that final decision with those consideration, those changes. That's just really been my experience over the years. Really, things always change. Everything is lightning fast. Environments change. Our political landscape, our globalization has changed a lot with regard to threats and other factors that affect team member safety and security of a building or location. But again, it's, as a leader, personally for me, it's important that I see what's going on from the front line in order to make an effective change that will be positive for that organization.
One thing I like that you said was you're talking about that buy-in, cross-functional buy-in. A lot of folks, especially those who come into military and law enforcement, they're like, no, these are the policies. We're doing this because of CPT or some perceived threat or risk, without really understanding how are you impacting the business or how are you impacting the people that are going to be doing that. I like how you have that focus. Have you had a situation where that, why is that so top of mind for you? Has there been an issue where you've had somebody who didn't like the way something was going and you had to address it?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, full transparency. We've all made mistakes as leaders, right? We've all had to learn and grow from our mistakes. So again, I had the greatest ideas in the world, right? And hit the ground running with those ideas, and thought like, oh, if I get this going, that my leaders are going to appreciate me. And as soon as you do those mistakes, you're going to get the phone call or the email or the, hey, you got a minute? Can we come chat? And then it's just kind of like, hey, you forgot about XYZ. We do this. This should have been considered. And, so again, over the years, I've learned from those mistakes. And again, it's important that you consider those key stakeholders, because you're just not one operation. It's the whole operation that's involved with security. It's not just, again, someone sitting at a post, or again, us securing doors, or whatever it is that we do in security. There's always going to be a component of somebody being affected by what we're doing to secure and protect our employees. Even though you have good intention about it, it's important that you involve those folks so that they are aware of what the changes are going to be coming down the pipe, and they will need to communicate that to their department team members or frontline members so that they're aware as well. So again, it's all about communication. It's all about closing the gap and ensuring that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah,
that's great. What do you think, Carlos?
Well, I was going to say I have two comments on that. One of them is, I love that you said it's like the base of everything, Gene. And I even go like a step further sometimes. Like I'll start with like minimum standards. I design the minimum standards of what's going to be everything from doors to alarms to access control, everything how it's going to do. The minimum standards, how I'm going to use the operation. From there, man, then I go, okay, let me get some policies that support these minimum standards, and make sure that people are doing the right things. And then I'm like, okay, now the policies are kind of put in place, minimum standards are in. I go, all right, man, let's go ahead and push then procedures that are built out of these things that we put together. And then I'm like, okay, I got it. Procedures are in. Now what we need, let's say, or a little bit of guidelines or a little bit of post orders or something like that, right? And then you kind of keep on. In my old days as a cop too, it was like the memos, they used to come out. This memo will stay in effect, fulfill the needs of whatever until we write that policy. That's probably under somebody's name for
memorandum of understanding.
The memorandum of understanding. So all those things, and then the second thing that you said too, Scott, that I thought was interesting is that you're right. I mean, how many people that we see in our industry that come from like the military law enforcement, they automatically think that NISPOM is the way to go for corporate, right? Or they think that if they came from the power side or something, Department of Energy, they're like, NERCSIP is the way to go for corporate. And you're like, oh, Lordy, Lordy, Lordy. I mean, not every policy is a good policy. How about that, guys? Not every policy is a good policy. Not every policy should be written. And not every policy does the job that a policy is supposed to do, which I think you guys would agree is to really keep the company out of the lawyer's office, out of liability. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of people, especially if they're new to an industry or new to a business, they want to apply things that they're comfortable with, uniform standards, especially coming out of military and law enforcement. No, this is our uniform policy. And I remember having issues with that when I landed in Silicon Valley. I saw one of our officers who I thought was actually a homeless person because of how he was wearing his uniform. I could see he was walking towards me. I couldn't see any patches or uniformity to it. He was wearing like a jacket that was unkempt. His pants weren't ironed, so we have to sometimes do have to be involved in those things. But I think if we're applying them, I agree with you both, but if we're applying these kind of in a vacuum, that's where the problem comes. If we haven't talked with folks, when I redesigned our contract staff's uniform, people said, well, why do they look like that? And I thought, I probably should have been more engaging with certain people in the organization. But we had received feedback previously with the previous uniform that it looked too tactical. They didn't like the cargo pants. My folks carried around notepads and different equipment, but they didn't like the cargo pants. So what, you want me to give them a backpack? I mean, I don't understand what more, but anyways, so that's policies and procedures just need to be made with others' thoughts in mind. It's really hard too, because you talk about that investigative standard. It is hard also to create an investigative standard that is universal or goes across country lines.
Mm-hmm.
The standard that you build in the United States may be executed differently or not at all in places like India, for example. I remember we had created a universal standard for all of our security folks. And the folks in India, just when we went and checked and did kind of an audit, they just kind of did what they thought was the right thing. They had no idea there was even a standard because nobody had communicated it to them. And so I think standards are good as long as they can be audited and enforced in the right ways. So Gene, what's when you're putting together a standard, and I know you've worked with contract folks, our vendor partners, as we call them sometimes. Is there something that some easy way to do this, or is there something that you would encourage people who are listening and they're trying to learn, how do I work with my vendor partner on policies and procedures? Because like what Carlos was saying, from the standards to post orders, and everything in between is kind of what we're talking about. But when you have a contract relationship, how do you navigate that? There's some tripwires you should be thinking of.
Right. It's really, and for me, it's a couple of buckets for me. For me, it's really just, again, internally looking and assessing what your security needs are and objectives, right? So that's important. Really just seeing what it is why are we actually going out to get this third party contractor? Because as you know, it's costly, right? So we want to make sure that our money is going to be a great ROI in value. And again, really just looking at, what the scope of services that are being offered from those third parties, and really just seeing what industry specific requirements that, pertain to our organization, right? So, or any organization, and really just looking at, what their experience is, what is their reputation. I know that that's the biggest thing that, a lot of security professionals fail to look at is what is their reputation? What's their track record? What is the client reference? And that's important to really branch out to other organizations or other security leaders that you network with to understand, like, what is the client satisfaction and reliability for them. What are some case study or examples? I use open source all the time to look and make sure that nothing has negative surface for those companies that we're looking at, because again, that affects that organization from that standpoint. Even though they're a third party, it still ties to that name of hey, you worked for us or you supported us. Not a good look, right? Really. And then just for me being a certified protection professional, it's nice to align with somebody else in that same industry, right? So you want to look and see if they have any type of certifications or any industry certifications of that matter. Anybody can call themselves a security company and throw on a uniform and flashlight, whistle, whatever equipment they have, but can they actually effectively do the job? And really just examine that. That's important, and really just assessing the personnel and the qualifications and training that they have. So what are some other things that I look at? I also look at really just their response time and availability. That's the biggest thing. If one of those guys call out during a shift, how are you going to replenish that shift and how quickly? That's important. And really for me, I think the other part was yes, reporting. Yes, that's the biggest thing, is reporting and communication. I've noticed time to time that when I've worked with third-party contractors, there'll be an extra person on shift, and I'll get a phone call from one of my leads or somebody to say, "Hey, do we have 2 security guards on shift?" And I'm like, "No, there should only be one." And then I'll call the third party, "Hey, just to be clear, we've only paid for 1 guard here. Why do we have 2? Oh, the person was in an area, they, we mismanaged our schedule, and we just put them on, so they're there for free. Okay, we just want to make sure that we don't get a surprise bill.
Yeah, check that bill.
Services for 2 guards, and that happens often. And you got to make sure that you're looking at that thoroughly, because again, not to generalize any of the companies out there, but there's some out there that are some sneaky Pete's, and they will absolutely do that if you're not paying attention.
That happened to me with a contractor.
and really just the big thing, the last thing for me is just the corporate fit, the cultural fit. That's the biggest piece, especially if you are deeply embedded with any organization who is solid on their core values and what they're looking for. You got to make sure that they're aligned in that, and really just the professionalism. If those don't hit the mark for me, then unfortunately, I'm going to move on to the next person that may be able to fit that for us.
Yeah, great points. So Carlos, if you're working with your vendor partners and you've set the strategy, you've set hey, these are the minimums at least for your security program, and your policy is you shall do X, Y, Z. How are you communicating that with your vendor partners? Are you doing anything differently than Gene?
I usually do a song and a dance, Scott, and then I tell them how I like to. So, you have the master agreement, the statement of work, and then you have the statement of work that we deal with every day. And obviously within those, you're going to have some key performance indicators, some KPIs that are extremely important. Not only is it important to get your business done, but something you said earlier that I enjoyed when we were talking a little bit about more like policies, Gene, is that it's clear and to the point, and it's concise. Like, it doesn't give people room to think about, well, is that really what he or she meant, right? That's so. Key performance indicators are great. SLAs, right? You're talking about people being on time and hours being charged this way, that way, that. So, all of those things are extremely important. But I'm also managing that contract through the type of contract too, Scott. Man, I'm sitting around, trying to figure out, look, is it an all-encompassing contract? Let's say, just give me your billable hours and it covers uniform, vehicles, and everything else, right? So are we talking about a simple style of contract like that? Or are we talking about a contract that, you can kind of, it's a smorgasbord thing, and you can charge me depending on what it is. For some companies, it's better to do it in a certain way. Some, others. I know that the government is very good at like, just give me one price fits all kind of thing, and let's just get that done, and that's what you charge me every month, and that's it. Okay, then just do the job, and then there are SLAs that you keep and key performance indicators for that style of contract, and there's a different ones for the smorgasbord type of things. So I mean, these are all the different things how I do it now. Policies wise, Scott, for me, um, I really work with the vendor to understand what are their needs, what information are they getting about our policies and our procedures, how they're going to do it. I work with them on them designing their post orders with my help. So they design it. It's under their header, right? I'm not telling their officers what to do because of co-employment and stuff like that. So it's like a back and forth negotiation. Like I want them to come with their procedures, their policies, and everything else, and then encompass what has to do with my company into their stuff, and I'll help them with that. But again, the co-employment thing is a serious thing, so we have to always be careful as we're managing this contractual obligation that we have with each other, the company and us, right? Who's doing the right thing? And it's kept me out of trouble a lot of times when I just speak to the owner of that contract or the representative of that contract for the company. And I think I told you this before, Scott. My goal is to be like the nicest human being to every security officer I come across, from the vendor company, obviously, to mine if I have proprietary security. Obviously, my Disney days won't let me do otherwise. But same thing with the vendor, right? I want them to believe that I'm the greatest guy in the world, and whenever I do see a problem, I don't call it out. I don't bring it up. I don't say anything. I go straight to the owner of the contract, the person that is managing that contract. That's usually a full-time employee that is salary employee for that company, and then I deal with them, right? And one of the biggest things I tell people all the time: look, if you come up to a guard shack and you see a guard just kind of sitting over there having a beer and smoking a cigarette when you come through, I want you to offer them, hey, do you need a light? Do you need a seat instead of sitting on the floor? And then I want you to go straight through, go find the owner of that contract, right? And you talk to that person about how unhappy you are, never the hourly employee. That's going to keep you in trouble. So long answer, but a couple different views there.
Yeah, I think it's important that like if there's a safety issue, yeah, you should absolutely engage there. But yeah, to your point, because of co-employment issues and some states are, and even some countries are harder on that issue than others. But that's just something that in-house security can run into. One of the things that I learned early on in my career or my security career was when you are engaging your vendor partner about changing things to a contract, which you shouldn't be, because the contract's already signed. But when you're engaging them on issues like, hey, we need to do something differently, we need to have this special training, or we need to do these certain things, we need to implement different policies or procedures, that comes at a cost. Many times it's called a change order. You'll hear that terminology, and that is going to be more money. So I've been in situations where we had a construction project that ended up needing security, which was something we had not planned for, because we were told, no, we got it, until they don't got it. And then they're like, security, fix this. And it's like, whoa, why all of a sudden are you throwing me the ball when I'm not even on the field to play? So things like that become very concerning, because you start doing change orders, that's more money into the contract.
So really piggyback on that, Scott and Carlos, going back to what you guys were talking about on the contract, it's really looking at the liability and risk management, right?
Yeah.
So you got to look at the indemnity clauses. Those are important. Again, you want to make sure that your company, whoever you're representing, is protected from any incidents involving that provider. And I think for me, from what I recall, was really just ensuring that they are going to be the ones that take on any of those incidents or responses that they need to answer. Again, as a security leader, we have to make sure that confidentiality is huge. I think that's the biggest part that's missed too. If there is a security response or an incident that occurs, what's the confidentiality look like? Because you have to make sure that you're ahead of that before anybody, the media, the public, gets a hold of that information. And and I know that there was some recent things that occurred with a bank outside of our security world, and there was an incident, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here soon. But again, that's important that you're looking at those clauses and you're looking at those responses and what that company is going to tell you on how they're going to handle that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, the NDAs.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a great point. And it's funny because as I was saying it, I'm like, man, it's a cost plus contract, right? So I'm trying to remember so I have to kind of look it up once again. But fixed price, cost plus, cost contracts, they're all slightly different, which you need the different SLA. So anybody that's looking at this, look it up. I think we should get into that thing, but I wanted to see if Scott, if you want to stop right here, and then we kind of recharge, come back in, and then we'll go into that concept, man. But we just covered a lot of great stuff right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The views expressed in this podcast stems from our passion for the security industry and for the physical security operations. They do not necessarily reflect the views of our employers.